That silver star is real.
They said she was a liar. A middle-aged woman wearing a Navy SEAL uniform, medals glinting across her chest, standing in handcuffs as cameras flashed. Stolen valor. Someone shouted. Another faker exposed. Another laughed. The crowd roared with mockery as deputies dragged her toward the courtroom. Some snapped photos. Others pointed, sneering. To them, she was a fraud chasing attention. But here's the question. What if the whole world mocks you for a truth you're forbidden to defend? She didn't yell back. She didn't beg. She didn't shed a tear. Her silence cut deeper than any words could. Because this wasn't the first time she'd been surrounded by enemies. Years ago it had been in deserts and jungles, under fire with lives on the line. Now, she stood in a courtroom instead of a battlefield. And once again, no one believed she could survive. The deputies smirked as they shoved her into the defendant's chair. A woman Navy SEAL? Come on, that's not even possible. The people laughed harder, but then something strange. A ribbon on her chest shimmered in the harsh light, blue with streaks of silver, the silver star. Few in the room recognized it. Fewer still believed it could be real. The judge adjusted his glasses, opened her file, and froze. His lips trembled, his hand shook, and in a whisper softer than breath, he asked the words that silenced the room, "That silver star is real." Asterisk, her name was Claire Donovan. To the people in her small town, she was nobody special, just another face in the grocery store line. A woman who lived alone in a modest apartment, who worked quiet jobs and kept mostly to herself. She was polite, but distant, the kind of person most folks passed on the street without a second thought. But whispers began to follow her. They saw her wearing a uniform when she walked to the store. They noticed medals pinned neatly to her chest during Veterans Day, and one year, when she marched in silence behind the local parade, people started to talk. She's a fake. She's doing it for attention. No woman has ever been a Navy SEAL. The rumor spread faster than truth ever could. Neighbors exchanged smirks when she passed. Strangers pointed at her in restaurants. Children repeated their parents' cruel words in schoolyards. And Claire never argued, not once. She listened to their laughter, lowered her eyes, and carried on. Her silence only made the gossip louder. People said if she were real, she would prove it. If she truly earned those medals, she wouldn't be hiding. But Claire knew the truth, and the truth wasn't hers to shout. It lived in files locked away behind steel doors in Washington. It lived in scars no one ever saw. And it lived in the heavy weight of one ribbon few had ever touched, blue and silver, the color of valor. Asterisk, Claire Donovan's story did not begin in that courtroom. It began long before, back when she was a young woman who refused to quit. From childhood, she was different. While others played safely, she tested her limits. She ran until her lungs burned, swam until her muscles screamed, and carried weights far heavier than anyone thought she could. Her father had been a Navy man, but even he told her, "The SEALs are not for women, Claire. It's impossible." She only answered with silence, the same silence she would one day carry into court. Her journey was not in the open, it was hidden, layered in secrecy. A program few people even believed existed. She was tested in ways most men never were: cold ocean nights, endless miles of sand, punishing drills designed to break the strongest spirit. Each time she collapsed, someone told her she didn't belong. Each time she stood again, the years passed, and so did the missions. Some of them never made the news. Some were buried before the ink dried, but those who were there never forgot her. They remembered the woman who dragged wounded teammates through gunfire, the woman who swam alone into black water carrying explosives strapped to her back, the woman who refused to leave anyone behind. The medals came, but they came in silence. No parades, no open records, just sealed envelopes and quiet handshakes in dim rooms. The silver star had been placed in her hands after a mission no reporter ever heard of. She remembered the officer's words, "You'll never be able to speak of this, but history will remember, even if people cannot." Then she was gone from the shadows of war and thrown back into the ordinary world. And the ordinary world had no idea who she was. At first, she tried to live quietly. She worked odd jobs, kept her head down, paid her bills, but silence does not protect you forever. People started noticing her scars. They noticed the medals when she wore her uniform for funerals or parades. They whispered, they laughed. Once, at a diner, a group of veterans confronted her. "Where'd you buy those ribbons, lady?" One sneered. She looked at him for a moment, then went back to her coffee. Her silence only fueled their anger. They told the waitress she was faking. They spread the story to others. It grew worse each year. At the grocery store, people muttered loud enough for her to hear. Children pointed at her medals on Veterans Day. One man even followed her to the parking lot, demanding to know her real name. Claire never defended herself. She bore the insults as she had borne the weight of rucksacks, bullets, and waves in the cold Pacific. She carried them because she knew the truth was locked away forever. Then one winter morning, 2 deputies showed up at her door. The accusations had finally reached the sheriff. A group of townspeople signed a petition claiming she was impersonating military service. That was all it took. She didn't resist when they placed her in cuffs. She didn't argue when they told her the charge, stolen valor. She only lowered her head and followed them to the patrol car. The news spread like fire. By the time she arrived at the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. They pointed, they laughed. Reporters shouted questions about her fake SEAL past. Someone spit at the ground near her shoes. The deputies grinned at the cameras, proud of their capture. To them, this was an easy case. No woman had ever been a SEAL. The medals were too many. The story was too impossible. But Claire's silence made them uneasy. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor wasted no time. He mocked her uniform. He told the jury no woman in history had ever passed Bud-S training, the brutal test for SEALs. He called her a fraud, a liar hungry for sympathy. The crowd laughed with him, and still Claire said nothing. But then the judge asked for her service file. The deputies handed over a folder they'd received through official channels. It was thick, too thick. The judge flipped the first few pages and found basic information, name, birth date, address. Then came long black lines of ink, entire pages covered in redactions. He frowned. Why is this all blacked out? The prosecutor smirked. Because she's making it up. That's what frauds do, hide behind fake paperwork. The judge didn't reply. His finger traced the pages, and he turned deeper into the file. More redactions, more classified stamps, and then a list of medals. Navy Achievement Medal, Bronze Star, and there, at the bottom, the Silver Star. He froze. The courtroom noise faded into silence. His lips parted. His hands trembled slightly as he whispered words no one expected to hear. That Silver Star is real. The prosecutor laughed nervously. Your Honor, surely you don't. But the doors opened at the back of the courtroom. A man in dress blues walked forward. His chest carried rows of medals. His rank admiral. The room fell silent as he stopped before the judge. Then, without a word, he turned to Claire, and he saluted. Gasps filled the room. Reporters fumbled with their cameras. The prosecutor's face turned pale. The admiral's voice cut through the silence. She served. She bled. She saved lives you'll never know about. Everything in that file is classified for a reason. This woman is no fraud. She's one of the bravest warriors our nation has ever had. The courtroom erupted not with laughter this time, but with stunned disbelief. Some people lowered their eyes in shame. Others wiped away tears. Claire remained silent. She did not smile. She did not look for recognition. She only lowered her head as the judge dismissed the charges. The world had mocked her, but in that moment, every doubt, every insult, every cruel word was crushed by truth. She walked out of the courtroom free, the same way she had entered the battlefield years ago, quiet, steady, unshaken. And those who had laughed at her never forgot the weight of their mistake, because the truth had been revealed. The Silver Star was real. And so was she. The days leading up to her trial became a circus. What had started as whispers in grocery stores and diners turned into headlines on every local news channel. Woman caught impersonating Navy SEAL. The story spread faster than fire, picked up by bloggers, podcasters, and even national outlets that thrived on scandal. Neighbors who once smiled politely now stared at Claire with open disgust. At the mailbox, a mother pulled her child close, whispering loud enough for Claire to hear, "That's her. That's the liar." Strangers knocked on her apartment door, shouting insults before running away. One man threw a beer can against her window, yelling, "You're spitting on real veterans." Through it all, Claire remained silent. She carried herself with the same steady discipline she had learned years ago, when survival meant ignoring the noise of doubt and focusing only on the mission. But this was different. There were no missions now, no orders, no team beside her, just the crushing weight of a world that believed she was a fraud. The prosecutors prepared their case with relish. They interviewed historians, who confirmed that no woman had ever officially graduated SEAL training. They brought in retired officers, who testified they had never served beside a female SEAL. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Every record said impossible. Every expert said fraud. And Claire never raised her voice in defense. Her silence became the talk of the town. People said it was proof of guilt. If she really served, she'd speak up. Others mocked her age, saying she couldn't even pass a basic fitness test now. The pressure mounted. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, waiting for her arrival. When the deputies brought her in, the crowd hurled insults and laughed at her medals. Some even held signs that read, "Respect real heroes, not fakes." Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. The prosecutor stood tall, his words sharp and mocking. "Ladies and gentlemen, this woman has spun the most ridiculous tale imaginable. A female Navy SEAL. Impossible. Not once in history has it ever happened. And yet she struts around in uniform, pretending, wearing medals she could only have bought online. This is not honor, it's theft." Laughter rippled across the room. Claire sat still, hands folded, eyes steady. The defense attorney tried to object, but the judge reminded him the prosecution had the floor. So Claire listened quietly as strangers tore her life apart. Each day, the humiliation deepened. One witness after another came forward, swearing they'd never seen a female SEAL. Some called her delusional. Others accused her of dishonoring every real warrior who had shed blood for the country. And still, Claire said nothing. Her silence burned in the minds of the jury. Some saw it as weakness, others as stubborn pride. But one or two wondered if it was something else, something heavier. Because every so often, when the prosecutor mocked her the loudest, her eyes seemed to drift somewhere far away, not in anger, not in fear, but as though she were remembering something terrible. Something sacred. That the truth was simple. Claire could not defend herself. Every mission she had lived through, every sacrifice, every scar, it was all buried under layers of secrecy. The files were locked. The stories were untold. Her honor was hidden in shadows the world would never see. But the crowd didn't care about truth. They wanted a show. One afternoon, during a break in the trial, a group of angry veterans surrounded her as she was escorted to the holding area. Their voices were bitter, sharp. "You're an insult. You think you can wear what we bled, for you disgrace every man who died." The deputies shoved the veterans back, but their words echoed. Claire's eyes lowered. She clenched her jaw. She remembered carrying men like them on her shoulders, dragging them out of fire, saving their lives when death had almost claimed them. And now those same kinds of men spit on her name. The build-up stretched on like a long storm. Each witness, each insult, each headline hammered the nail deeper. Even her defense attorney began to lose faith. He whispered to her one night, "Claire, if you have anything that can prove your service, now's the time." She only shook her head, quiet, steady. The same answer she had given to countless interrogations and debriefings in her career. Say nothing, protect the mission. But inside, the weight crushed her. She thought of the friends she had lost, the screams she had silenced with her own hands, pressing bandages against wounds, the blood she had washed off in rivers far from home. Every medal on her chest was real. Every ribbon carried a memory. But none of it could be spoken. The town grew. Crueler parents told their children to avoid her. Employers refused to hire her. Even the local veterans hall banned her from entering, calling her a disgrace to the uniform. Still, she walked each day into that courtroom with quiet dignity, and each day, the judge grew more uneasy. The thick, redacted file gnawed at him. Why were so many pages blacked out? Why was this fraud's record more classified than generals he'd seen on trial? He studied her carefully, the way she sat, the way she refused to argue, the calmness, almost like discipline. He had presided over countless stolen valor cases before. The fakers always talked too much. They bragged, they shouted, they demanded, but not her. She bore humiliation like it was familiar, like it was lighter than the burdens she'd carried. Before the pressure finally reached a breaking point on the 7th day of trial. The prosecutor delivered his most brutal attack yet, holding up her medals in a box, shaking them before the jury. "These are lies," he declared. "Fake trinkets from a store. No woman has ever earned these, and no woman ever will." The courtroom erupted with laughter, cheers, and jeers. For a moment, Claire's lips pressed together. Her eyes shone as if with tears, but no tears fell. She only sat straighter, staring ahead, letting the storm pass. But the judge saw something different. He saw a flicker in her gaze, not fear, not shame, but the look of someone who had been here before, surrounded, attacked, alone, and had survived. And that was when he decided to dig deeper into her file. The next morning, he requested unredacted documents from a federal office. He didn't tell the prosecutor, he didn't even tell the defense. When the envelope arrived in his chambers, sealed with markings of high clearance, he knew something wasn't normal. He carried it into court with hands that felt suddenly heavy. The trial continued as the prosecutor hammered her name again, but the judge opened the envelope, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. At first, It was what he expected: birth date, training records, deployments, but then lines of text that froze his breath, names of operations blacked out from public history, mentions of classified units, accounts of bravery under fire, and then one word that made his chest tighten: Silver Star. His eyes darted across the page. Dates, locations, citations. Each line confirmed the impossible. The medal wasn't fake. It was earned. It was real. His lips parted, and for the first time in the trial, his voice trembled. That Silver Star is real. The room fell into stunned silence, but the reveal was only beginning. The courtroom went still. The judge's words weren't shouted. They weren't even loud, but they fell heavier than a gavel strike. That Silver Star is real. The prosecutor froze, his smile faltering. The jury leaned forward. Reporters stopped scribbling, pens hovering in the air. Claire sat motionless, her hands folded, her eyes lowered. She didn't look at anyone. The judge cleared his throat, reading further. His voice shook slightly as he continued. According to this record, this medal was awarded after a mission details classified Evan, the location, sealed. He paused, adjusting his glasses. But the signatures are real. The citations are authentic. This isn't a forgery. The room stirred with uneasy murmurs. The prosecutor barked, "Your Honor, this must be a mistake. No woman has ever." And then the doors opened. Every head turned. A man in navy dress blues stepped into the courtroom. The rows of ribbons across his chest glittered like fire in the light. His rank insignia left no doubt. An admiral. The bailiff stiffened. The crowd fell silent. Even the prosecutor's voice caught in his throat. The admiral walked forward slowly, his footsteps echoing like thunder. He stopped in front of the defendant's table. And then he turned to face Claire. For the first time, she lifted her eyes. He saluted. Gasps filled the courtroom. The sound was sharp, collective, like a single breath being sucked out of every chest. Reporters scrambled for photos. Jurors blinked in disbelief. Veterans in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The admiral's voice carried with iron steadiness. "This woman is no fraud. She is Claire Donovan, decorated in service, SEAL operator, though her missions will never be spoken of in open court. She has earned every ribbon she wears and more that cannot even be shown." The prosecutor stumbled. But that's impossible." The admiral's glare cut him down. "Impossible. Tell that to the men she dragged out of burning buildings. Tell that to the team she kept alive when the mission was lost. Tell that to the flag-draped coffins she refused to leave behind." His words rang through the silence. The judge set down the file, his face pale, his eyes wet with something that looked almost like shame. He looked at Claire, then at the prosecutor, then back at Claire again. The whispers in the crowd turned into something else, not laughter, not mockery, but a growing sense of awe. A man in the back, the same one who had once shouted "Stolen valor," lowered his head. Another wiped tears from her cheeks. Claire didn't bask in the moment. She didn't smile. She didn't even nod at the admiral's salute. She just sat quietly, as if the weight of years pressed too heavily for pride. Judge finally spoke. His voice was soft, but steady. "This court has no right to try you as a fraud, Mrs. Donovan. The evidence confirms your service. The testimony confirms your honor. These charges are dismissed." The gavel struck. It was over, but the room didn't move. No one rushed to leave. No one laughed anymore. They just watched her. The woman they had mocked. The woman they had spat on. The woman they had arrested in front of cameras. She stood slowly, her chains removed. The admiral stepped aside, bowing his head as she passed, and as she walked out of the courtroom, silence followed her. Not because they didn't know what to say, but because no words could possibly be enough. But for the first time, the world had seen her truth. And for the first time, they realized how wrong they had been. The Silver Star was real, and so was she. She did not celebrate. When Claire Donovan stepped out of that courthouse. She did not lift her arms in victory or shout at the cameras. She did not demand apologies from the people who had mocked her. She did not glare at the reporters who had splashed her face across every headline. She simply walked, quiet, steady, carrying the same silence she had carried on the battlefield. And maybe that silence was the loudest thing of all, because real warriors don't beg for recognition. They don't demand respect. They live with the weight of what they've seen, of what they've done, of who they've lost. And they carry it quietly because no medal, no parade, no headline can ever balance the price that was paid. The people who once laughed now couldn't meet her eyes. The same veterans who had accused her of being a fraud lowered their heads as she passed. A few even tried to salute her, but Claire did not look at them. She walked on, her gaze fixed straight ahead. That is the truth about honor. It doesn't need to be shouted. It doesn't need to be proven. It exists in silence, in scars, in sacrifices that most will never understand. Claire was a woman who lived in two worlds. In one, she was forgotten, dismissed as a fake, humiliated in public. In the other, she had been a warrior, a protector, a ghost who had given everything for missions the world would never hear about. Most people will never know her story. Not fully, not the missions, not the nights where survival was a coin toss, not the names of the men she saved. Those things are buried forever. But one truth remains: she was real. The medals were real, the silver star was real, and in that truth is a lesson we cannot forget. Every day we pass people on the street, in stores, in parks. We don't know who they are. We don't know what battles they've fought, what scars they carry, or what they've given up for others. Too often we judge by appearances. Too often we mock what we don't understand. Claire Donovan's story reminds us that respect should never come after proof. It should be given freely, because behind the quiet eyes of a stranger might live a history greater than we can imagine. The world called her a liar. The truth called her a hero. And in the end, silence became her loudest answer. Asterisk. If Claire's story moved you, don't let it end here. Too many heroes walk among us, unrecognized, disrespected, or forgotten. They don't ask for applause, but they deserve to be remembered. By sharing stories like this, we keep their honor alive. So if you believe respect should come before judgment, hit that like button. If you believe sacrifice deserves to be remembered, subscribe and stay with us as we tell more untold stories of silent warriors. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it, because behind every quiet face, there may live a hero, and their silence should never be mistaken for weakness.